Okay, this is now the 5-minute tarot for the 17th of January 2018, and I'm kind of back. I've had this flu. It's kind of virulent version of the, I looked it up, it's the AH3N2 virus. Anyway, it started about the 23rd of December. And I think in about a week, I'll be kind of over it all, but it's still kind of with me. But anyway, I want to do a video today. And this is, I think I did something like this before, but it was a while ago and I can't remember when. And it's a way of beginning a reading, but it's also really useful if you want to practice on your own. And you're practicing reading cards. You're not just taking a single card and doing a meditation on it, where you can sometimes end up with just going round in circles or kind of trapped within your own mind and your own way of thinking, but not really understanding the card or what it shows, or coming up with information that you could pass on to the questioner, or coming up with ideas that would give you an actual answer to the question that has been asked. So I don't really have much time for pick a card a day and make sense of it. Partly because, as I've said before, what a card means or what it shows to a large extent depends on the question that was asked. So just picking a card a day, what is this telling me? It really doesn't work, I don't think. So I was going to set up a camera behind my shoulder so you could see, but it's too much. Today it's too much. I'll do it later. So I'm going to take the webcam and tilt it down onto the table where I have the deck. So the idea is that before you begin a reading with somebody, you've got the questions written down, you've been paid, and now you're explaining to the questioner sort of how the tarot works, or how we're going to make sense of the cards, or how we're going to answer the question. Because people may have had readings elsewhere and they can have their own ideas about what's involved in a tarot reading or how it should be done, but you're not going to have a discussion with them because that can just take a long time and you don't get anywhere with it because they've got their own idea about how it should be done, maybe, or they had bad experiences and they don't like how it works. So what you're going to do is you're going to explain to the questioner one way that the tarot works, and then it brings them into an understanding of what the tarot is and how you can read it, how you can use the images on the cards to to give an answer to the question that has been asked. And so you can do this with an actual person on the other side of the table, or you can do this on your own. So you shuffle and you're going to lay cards, as I'll show you in a minute, and you're imagining there's somebody there and you're talking to this individual. And the thing is, you can do this once a day for a year, and it's going to be different each time. But at the same time, you're going to develop a much greater understanding of how to do a reading and how to make sense of cards. So this one, I'm going to tilt the webcam down onto the table. And it takes a moment to focus. Okay, that will have to do. Okay, so what you do is you say to the questioner, okay, we know the question, and so what we're going to do is we're going to consult tarot cards. So you turn it you turn the cards face up, looking at you, and you say to them, okay, with the tarot there are 4 suits, and you go through and you pick out one card of each suit and you put it on the table in front of you. Again, the reason for the camera over the shoulder would have been that you're looking at the card from the point of view of the reader, right? So when I look at this card, as you can see, it's upside down from my point of view, so the card is reversed, even though the questioner looks at it and it seems to be upright. So what we do is we say to them, there are 4 suits. One of them is pentacles or coins, which represents, let me just put it there, it represents money, but it also represents values. So it shows what you care about. We also have the suit of swords, And this is the 5. And swords represents hardship, conflict, and strife, and situations where there might be conflict. We also have, and you look through the suit of batons, and batons represents energy and enterprise. And then the 4th suit, what do we got here? The 4th suit is cups. So I'm going to look through and find a cup card, and if I can, oh, there's a 7 of cups. Okay, cups represents home, love, emotions, family, and so on. And then what you do is you pick one of you talk about one of the cards, and you say something about it. And maybe what you do the first time is you just repeat what you read in a book, and that's okay, because you're beginning to develop an understanding, and you're also telling the questioner the kind of meaning that they might expect. But the thing is, if you do this, let's say you do this today, and we pick the 3 of batons, and you talk about it, and so you say, this is somebody, as you can see, they're standing on top of a hill. So that, and you talk about it, and you could say it's a good card, or it shows good results coming to you. But maybe you look at it and you think, okay, we're looking at this person, we can see his back, but we can't see his expression. So if this card comes up, it's a good card, but we may not know whether the person is happy or sad. So we can expect there's a certain amount of confidence from the way he's standing and the fact that he's on a hilltop looking out over the future, let's say, or looking out over the situation. But we don't know, or we can't be sure that he is confident, but probably he is. And then maybe you talk about the contrast between that 3 of batons and the 5 of swords, which you can see involves 3 people. And we've got somebody who's won, somebody who's been defeated, and somebody going off to comfort them. So this card, the 3 of batons, is maybe quite stable and shows a situation that is beginning to develop. Whereas this one, the 5 of swords, it looks like what the situation after the conflict. So if the question is about a relationship, for instance, is it going to go well, and you get the 3 of batons? Probably yes, because it's a good card. It may take a little bit of time, because the fellow's looking into the distance. It may take a little bit of time before everything is clear, but you can be confident that things are going to go well, and you and the partner are going to be cooperating or on the same page or looking for the same things. You're both looking into the distance, but you're going to tend to see the same outcome. Whereas with the 5 of swords, what's going to happen in the relationship? Here you're left with an awkward situation, or somebody's been defeated, or somebody feels hurt, or somebody feels abandoned, for instance, the person in the distance. And now you've got kind of a difficulty that has to be cleared up first. So what you're talking about, pick a card and just say something about it, because we could do the same spread tomorrow, or the same layout tomorrow, and maybe we get the 3 of batons again. There it is. Where is it? There. The 3 of batons again. So you might talk about the suit of batons. It represents energy and enterprise. So you're going to have, so what's going to happen? You're going to have ideas. Batons represents energy and ideas and inspiration. You're going to know what you want to do, but because you're on the hillside looking down, looking into the distance, it's maybe going to take a certain amount of time for you to be clear in your own mind about how it's going to work out. So maybe with this 3 of batons, you need to be patient, because you don't know yet how it's going to end, what the end result is going to be. And then you do the same card again, the same spread a week from now, and you've got this imaginary person opposite on the other side of the table, and the 3 of batons comes up. And maybe you talk about the ships that you can see there, and you talk about how you've begun something because your ships are now at sea. And it's up to them. Your time has to pass before you know whether they reach their destination successfully, or whether they come back with produce, for instance. So again, you have to be patient. So we've got you're talking about a card and saying something sensible or something meaningful about it, and then you can bring in a question and show how you would relate the image on the card to the question that has been asked. And again, not that I want to, I would normally do this and pick one card. But maybe we choose the 10 of Pentacles. So we've got multiple generations and they're all comfortable. And that can be an important aspect of the answer to the question. So we've got 4 suits: Pentacles, Swords, Batons, and Cups. And we've also got what are so-called court cards: Kings, Queens, Knights, and Pages. And we've got one of each of them for each suit. So we've got the King of Swords. And maybe while I'm looking, I would talk about kings. So kings tend to be, let's say, older people who are established, who know what they're about. Whereas pages are younger individuals, and pages can often represent children. Then we've also got the Queen. If I can get this one out here, there's the Queen of Cups. So kings tend to be older men. Queens tend to be older, mature women. So it doesn't mean that it's only a man or it's only a woman, but it could be that if the King of Swords comes up, you are supposed to be like the King of Swords. You're supposed to be determined, decisive, because you've got a sword in your hand, and somebody who knows what they want and is willing to be difficult and awkward in order to get their own way. Or you could be the Queen of Cups, so you have to be maybe manipulative and skillful, and maybe you lay guilt on people and make them feel guilty in order to get them to do what it is that they want to do. So kings and queens tend to be older people. The page, and then I'm going to look for a knight. There's a Knight of Swords, as it happens. So pages tend to be younger people, young women who grew up to be queens. Knights tend to be younger men who grew up to be kings. So knights are messengers, but knights bring change. So let's say we want to know what's going to happen in the marriage, and we get the Knight of Swords. We've got a little bit of awkwardness and difficulty and upset coming into the picture if the card is in the future. Because you look at this knight, he's kind of wild and undisciplined, it looks like, because of the expression on the horse's face and the fact he's got a sword. So don't be surprised if you or the partner start acting in an unreasonable manner and start making demands and start threatening and saying, this has got to change, and they can be a bad temper, or they can be angry, or they can be upset. It maybe have nothing to do with you or to do with the relationship. Maybe it's something at work, or a friend insulted them. Because we often, so you're talking about this, but you can bring in ideas that you've picked up or information that you've read about. And so you might want to talk about how we tend to blame other people for things that really aren't their fault. But it's easier to blame somebody else than accept responsibility that you made it come apart, or you did something wrong. And so the Knight of Swords could represent you or the partner blaming the other or getting upset, but it's not really anything to do with the marriage itself. But you've been hurt, you've been upset in life, and you're taking it out on the partner. So you're beginning to get an idea of what kind of situation the marriage partner is going to be facing. And then we say we have 22 so-called major trumps, and these are cards with titles like Temperance, and like the Star, and Death, and one more, if I can find one, the Magician. So these are cards with titles, and what we can do is we can think about the question, and we can use the name of the card to give the answer to the question. Right, so what's going to happen in the marriage? If we get the Temperance card coming up, if you temper metal, you burn off impurities to make it stronger. So what's going to happen in the marriage? You need to get rid of impurities or things that don't work, or bad habits or bad ideas, in order to make the marriage stronger. And when you talk like that, let's say the person chose 14 for the two numbers. When you talk like that about burning off impurities and getting rid of bad habits, you don't need to know what the bad habits actually are. Because the listener, the questioner, when you say, you've got the certain bad habits in the relationship and you're better to deal with them and get rid of them, the person's going to know, oh, okay, I know what bad habits you're talking about. The reader doesn't need to know what the actual bad habits are, but the questioner is going to make sense of the general information that you're talking about, and they're going to be able to be specific. Because they understand what the situation that they're in, they're going to be able to be specific and know what sort of bad habits you might be talking about. And they might then say, okay, if we've got this, if let's say the husband or the wife, she never listens to me, what do I do about it? Then they've taken the idea that there are bad habits that have to be addressed and dealt with from the temperance card. They've applied it to their actual situation, and they're now asking you for something specific. How do I get the other person to listen? So you've got an idea of what, and maybe what you do is you pick a card. Oh, okay, I got the Fool. Let me take. I can't think at this moment, but let's say we get the Four of Pentacles. Right, as okay, how do you get them to listen? Pentacles is money, but it's also values, and the person's sitting in a fixed kind of a way. So maybe what you do is begin to know what the person cares about. So maybe they care about something and they don't want to let it go, but maybe it's no longer appropriate. It's a bit like. When your children are young, you sort of want to boss them around and make decisions for them. But when they get older, let's say 20 or 30, they're not children anymore. And you can't keep treating them when they're 30 as if they're 4 years of age. And maybe that's the problem that is being represented by this Four of Pentacles. So you're talking about, let's say, the Star, death, ending to beginnings, the Magician, which is creative and inventive and full of ideas. So if you're represented by the Magician, go out and do stuff. Don't just sit and wait for it to happen to you. So let's say I like people to choose 2 numbers. So I might talk about, let's say the person chose 17 and no, it has to be 1 and 17. So I would isolate these 2 cards and talk about the Magician, that you have ideas and imagination and you want to create. So do something where your name is going to live after you. Don't just think about it, but actually turn it into something real. And that gives you a general picture of the situation the questioner is in. And it enables them to understand their own wider situation. And it's the background. And so they can then act accordingly within this kind of a background. Whereas if the background had been death and temperance, then it's time for new beginnings. But you've also got to purify yourself and burn off impurities, which is a different situation from the Magician and the Star. Okay, so what you do is, that's the introduction to the reading. So you go through these steps. You take a couple of minutes to explain what's going on and how we would make sense of cards. And then you answer the actual questions that the person's asked. And then we can do this same thing tomorrow, or you can do this same thing tomorrow. We've got this imaginary person that we're going to explain things to, and we open it up and we shuffle and we say, okay, there are 4 suits in the tarot. We have Batons, energy and enterprise. We have Pentacles, which is money and values. We also have Cups, which represents love, home, emotion, family, and so on. And we have Swords, which represents hardship and conflict and strife. And then you would pick one of them. If I can find a sword card here, pick one of them and start talking about it. Just mention something. Okay, I got that 5 again. But there we've got it. So with the Ace of Batons, it's time to begin things. And so you say something. Maybe you said the exact same thing yesterday, but it doesn't matter, because maybe you're going to add something more, or you're going to say something slightly different. And you'll find that as you practice in this kind of a way, you're not just picking a card and trying to make sense of it, but you're explaining what a card might mean and how you would arrive at the answer or the meaning for the particular card based on the question. Okay, that's it for the moment. I've got something else in mind for the next couple of days. And let me just turn this up again. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have comments or questions, let me know. And I have a couple of ideas about what I'm going to do soon, or what I'm in the process of putting together. Because I looked on this flow thing as a bit like reformatting the hard drive. If you do that to a computer, then you reload programs and you organize it more logically. So I've thought, okay, I've been doing various things last year. I've got 3 or 4 ideas that are slightly different from what I've done before, but I'd kind of like to look on it as a fresh start, with a clear base and a clear start, a clear starting point, and I can develop it. And ideally this time I will develop it more fully, because I'm kind of good at starting things, but not so good at finishing them up. But this year I'm determined to start and develop and kind of get to an end point. That's it for the moment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you ideally in a couple of days. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.